Hey there, guys. All right, today we are back with some more History Matters. This time, another of their short animated documentaries. This time, the one on why did Sweden support the Viet Cong? Because they are based. All right, thanks for watching. Remember to hit that like button and subscribe. Before we dive in and get the answer to this, although I think I kind of know the answer, just because of the historical neutrality of Sweden. Before we dive in, make sure you go and check out the links in the description box below. I would love it if you joined the Discord and followed me over at Twitch. Okay. Yeah, let's I don't know the exact specific reasons if there are any. I just think it's because the Viet Cong were defying imperialism uh and Sweden was in support of the autonomy and independence like that. I'm assuming. Let's go ahead and dive in.
When most people think of the Viet Cong and their allies, Sweden doesn't often make the list.
Nope.
Yet throughout the Vietnam War, Sweden was a supporter of theirs and harshly critical of the United States.
Nice.
Which raises the question,
Fucking based, Sweden, let's go.
why? Why did Sweden side with the Viet Cong? So, during the Cold War, Sweden aimed for a policy of non-alliance in peace, neutrality in war. That is, they weren't picking sides. However, throughout most of this period, it was pretty clear that Sweden lent much more towards the NATO camp than that of the Warsaw Pact. Yet, there were many issues in which Sweden was consistent in its criticism of the USA and the West, and one such issue was the Vietnam War. The Vietnam War had two phases. The first was when France, the colonial overlord of this area called French Indochina, fought to quell a rebellion against its rule. Now, at first, the USA wasn't all too fussed about this since it had no desire to preserve old European empires, but with Vietnam, there was an issue. Because in peace talks, it was divided into two states, and North Vietnam was under the control of communists and they wanted the South too. And as such, it was intervention time. Because domino theory dictated that all instances of a potential communist government must be stopped lest the entire world fall to it. So in the mid-1960s, Sweden pushed itself as an international mediator and spent 3 years trying to get the USA and North Vietnam to make peace. This effort came to an abrupt stop in 1968 when American President Lyndon B. Johnson told Sweden to mind its own business. The next year, Olof Palme was elected as Swedish Prime Minister, and his attitude towards the Vietnam War was much more hostile. You should know that he was a firm critic of many foreign nations at this point, so the USA wasn't being specifically targeted. However, he was extremely public with his critiques, such as when in 1972 he compared the US bombing campaigns in Vietnam to Germany's use of concentration camps in World War II.
Okay. Yeah, the bombing campaigns are really fucked up, but concentration camps? No.
And in response, the United States promptly broke off diplomatic relations with Sweden until the next year. So Sweden's support for North Vietnam and the Viet Cong was because Palmer and the rest of the Swedish government saw US intervention as ignoring the will of the people there, thus making it an act of imperialism.
Okay. So yeah, they were being anti-imperial. Got it.
Now, Palmer wasn't a communist or anything and was mostly driven by a fierce anti-war ideology. These criticisms ultimately changed nothing, and so Palmer opted to give direct aid to the Viet Cong. Now, obviously, this didn't include sending a bunch of Swedish soldiers to Vietnam in order to fight the Americans or anything. What Sweden did was skirt as close to helping as they could without drawing the wrath of NATO. And the first thing that Palmer did was to give asylum to American draft dodgers. The second thing Sweden did was to send medical supplies to Vietnam along with doctors to train Viet Cong medics. Outside of the government, many Swedes were fiercely pro-Viet Cong, and there was even an attempt by members of the public to send money to North Vietnam to acquire weapons. In the end, Sweden's support for the Viet Cong was more focused on its opposition to America's war against it. Whilst the government did recognise North Vietnam as an independent country, send it medical supplies and give asylum to American draft dodgers, this was done from a position of pacifism. Sweden supported the Viet Cong against the United States because it would have supported anyone in the same situation against any other great power, which was a position that Sweden would hold many more times throughout the Cold War. I hope you enjoyed this episode and
Okay. And that was why Sweden supported the Viet Cong, a short animated documentary by History Matters. This is one of their weaker episodes. They did not quite go into the content, into super deep contextual analysis as they've done in previous animated documentaries. So I'm going to assume that this might be one of the older episodes. I did not check the date of it. But yeah, this one felt a little weaker compared to other ones that we have watched on the channel here. Still good though. They still, I do feel that they did a good job of answering the why actually this time around. I can't remember which episode it was, which video it was, but I think it was one of the more recent watches I did of them, where I just felt like they weren't necessarily answering the question. This time, I felt like they at least covered the question well enough. Not quite as good as they typically do, though. But yeah, that was why Sweden supported the Vietcong. I hope you guys enjoyed. Remember to hit that like button and subscribe for more, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.